Hey, I'm Dean and this is Legacy Voyage. In Season 1, I'm documenting my journey to earning my first 100K net worth as a full-time college student. Join me as I share some of the lessons I learned along the way.
It's honestly kind of mind-blowing how popular Starbucks is. Like, this past weekend, I even went to Brazil, and they had a Starbucks there. Like, it's literally everywhere across the world, wherever you turn. Nothing back to it. I'm not sure if it was in Brazil, but pretty sure it was. Anyways, there was this time where Starbucks was about to go in the hole. Like, they were literally 7 years out from being completely bankrupt, going completely insolvent, which means they got no money. And at this time, it was New Orleans who came in. They got hit by Katrina, and Katrina was this huge hurricane and completely destroyed the entire city. In New Orleans, they came to the head of Starbucks, the CEO. They said, please come in. We need your guys' help. And so they brought like 10,000 people. They gave them like this huge masterclass of how to build up a business and turn it around. And so there's one time where the CEO, he's about to walk into a gymnasium, to a huge gym of 10,000 people. And he's really feeling the weight of what he was about to say. And at the time, his CFO comes. The CFO is about to quit. He's about to leave. And the CFO asks him, like, what are you going to say? What are you going to tell them? And the CEO, he says, to tell them the truth. And to tell them that we only have 7 years of still being profitable. We are losing our CFO and it's going to be tough. But what he also told them was, all it takes is 11 customers. So if every single store in the entire Starbucks chain, if every single one of them could bring in 11 customers every day, then they can turn this thing around. And that's exactly what he told them. He said, we're going to focus on one store at a time, one customer at a time, one cup of coffee at a time. And through that, we can make this huge thing, this huge abstract thing that no one can really wrap their minds around. Because he said, as the massive company that they began to be, you start thinking in terms of billions of dollars and tens of millions of coffee cups and all these different things. When really, he says, you just focus on the small little changes from the one cup of coffee every single day. And if you can focus on that, if every single person in the company, if they can focus on that one thing, then through that becomes this massive change that is eventually brought about. And that's what I thought was a really cool story, especially because it ties into what I was talking about last episode, like focusing on the small things, on the habits. Because like he said, like the company's wealth is a lagging measure of their prioritization habits, of what they're prioritizing in terms of how we're going to get more customers, how we're going to get more stores, all those things. I thought that was a really good story. Moving on to the philosophizing section, there was a couple of things I'm going to run through. The first one I want to talk about is confrontation, because I'm not sure why I wrote this down this past week or whenever I wrote this down, but for some reason I wrote it down and I'm just applying it to the vice virtue scale, where any virtue pushed to the extreme becomes a vice. And so I think confrontation is actually a virtue, where it's not like, oh, it's bad to be confrontational, because in some cases you need to be confrontational. For example, freshman year, literally last year, not even last year, because now I'm going through junior year. But freshman year of college, I remember I did not want to confront people. And because of that, I let my roommates just basically take over. Like, they would stay up till 2 in the morning, 4 in the morning, and just blast music, and I would be trying to sleep. And it would get to the point where I wouldn't even sleep in my room. I would go to the living room and then sleep on the couch because of how loud they were. And I would just let it be because I didn't want to confront them. When really, it was a skill that I needed to learn. The skill that was necessary for me to move forward. And so eventually I went up to them and I said, okay, guys, we got to change up some things. And it wasn't until this one dude, he came up to me, he was like, Dean, if you tell them and they don't listen to you, then that's on you. But if you don't say it in the first place and they don't even know, then that's on you. And I was like, oh, dang, that's so true. So I have to confront them about these things. And so in one sense, you have to confront people. But when that's pushed to the extreme, I think you get shame, where you confront them so much where you make them start feeling shameful. And then on the other hand, we have being accepting, where I think it's good to be accepting to a certain extent. And because in being accepting, you're also forgiving and creating community and all those things. But when you become accepting and that's pushed to the extreme, that's when you get enabling and you're accepting everything that does. Like, for example, when I was a freshman, I was accepting of everything my roommates did. And I was like, oh yeah, you could do whatever you want. And then I was enabling them to just throw parties and stay up till 4 in the morning and not even care about their roommates. And eventually I talked to them and they were super chill. And I realized I was dumb for not even bringing this up to them earlier, but it all worked out. The other thing I want to talk about is this idea of fault, because in that example, I was placing the fault on them. Like, it's their fault for playing this loud music and not even caring about their roommates. But it wasn't until my mentor basically came up to me and he said, bro, if you don't tell them, then that's on you. And in that sense, he was placing the fault on myself. And that's when I realized, like, fault is basically the same thing as blame. Like, when I blame someone else, I'm placing the fault in them, which means I'm making them responsible for the outcome. But when my mentor, he was like, bro, it's on you. He's placing the fault on myself. And by taking responsibility for the outcome, I had the power to change it. Like, I went up to them and told them, we got to change up some things. So we're finally able to change it up. Now, moving on to the next philosophizing thing is this idea of blurring the lines between belief and action. And there's this, I want to say it's like Pitbull or something, where he had this lyric quote. He said something along the lines of, show me your future, or show me your friends, I'll show you your future, keep the change. And that for some reason stuck a lot with me, because it goes super well with this idea of you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And I think this is kind of similar, where if I say, show me your habits, show me your actions, and I'll tell you your beliefs, where this fine line between action and belief is completely blurred. Because here's an example. I can say all I want. Oh, yeah, I believe that I want to be healthy. I really do believe that I want to be healthy. If you look at my actions, they'll tell you everything you need to know about my beliefs. And in some sense, this feels like devaluing beliefs, because like it's hard to know what people believe looking from the outside. It's hard to know what you believe, whoever's listening to this podcast, it's hard to know what you believe because I don't have access to your mind. But what I do have access to is observing your actions. And that's one way I can tell you what you believe. And when applying this to myself, it's like, it's still difficult, because even though I technically do have access to my own mind, it's still hard, or for me, difficult to distinguish what I actually believe. But it's a lot easier to look at my actions and from those actions be like, okay, that's what I actually believe. I'm still trying to workshop this idea, and I'll think about it more, philosophize about it more, but that's what I've been thinking about lately a lot, is blurring the actions between belief, or blurring the lines between belief and action. Because I think a crucial example of this, and probably why I thought of it in the beginning, is people who say they believe in Jesus, or they believe in God, or they believe in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, in the Mormon Church. Like, they'll say they believe all those things, but when you look at their actions, it just doesn't reflect. Like, you can't say, I believe drinking is immoral. You can't say, I believe I don't want to drink alcohol because it goes against my religion, and then go ahead and drink alcohol in spite of that. And in some ways, that's what it seems like people are doing. It's like, oh, I believe in Jesus. I believe everything that he stood for. And then they go ahead and go against everything he teaches. Not everything he teaches, but like parts of what he teaches. And it's like, okay, like we're all imperfect and all those things. So I guess that's the differentiator. But I think that's initially why I started thinking of this whole topic in the beginning of beliefs and actions. And going off of that belief, the last thing I want to talk about is an update to the belief spiral framework that I was working on in the past couple episodes. I initially set it to where we look at an experience, and then from that we interpret it, and then we come to a belief about it, and then we take actions based on that belief, and then it creates certain experiences, and then round and round it goes. I think instead of having those 4 major points, I really think it only comes down to 3, where we have experience to belief to action, and round around it goes. But in between each of those steps, in between experience to belief, and then belief to action, then action to experience, I think we can create, or I think there's terms for those connections. Like, for example, when you go from an experience to a belief, that's where you're interpreting the experience. And then when you go from belief to action, it's when the beliefs motivate you to act a certain way. And then once you do those actions, it results in certain experiences. And so those are the 3 things that go in between those. So we have the Bay spiral, which is belief, action, experience. And then in between those is motivation, results, and then interpretation. And to put some definitions on these, or at least some definitions that I temporarily have for what these stand for. Motivate is how much you want to do something. So let's say if I have 2 beliefs, and one belief says I want to eat the cookie, the other belief says I don't want to eat the cookie. A certain belief will push you, motivate you more to eat the cookie, meaning you want to eat the cookie more, and it'll make you want to do that action. Result is the consequences of your action. So by performing certain actions, it'll lead to certain results or experiences. And then when you have an experience and you come to a belief about the experience, that's when you interpret it. That's when you make meaning from the facts. And as I'm rereading Atomic Habits, I'm finding that this kind of maps on to the habit loop that he talks about in Atomic Habits, where it goes from a cue to a motivation to a response to a reward. Where, like, for example, if I'm walking through a casino and the cue there would be all the bright lights and the smell of the casino, and that's an experience. And then from there, I come to a motivation where if I am a gambler, then I'll have this motivation to want to sit down at a machine and do the slots. But since I'm not a gambler, I'm not going to have that motivation. And then I think in there it goes from I interpret the experience and then I come to a belief about it. And then I come to a motivation, or it motivates me a certain way to act. And then the third step is response. And this is like whatever action that I do from it, which leads to the reward, also results in the experience that repeats round and round and round it goes. I realize that I'm saying it out loud, like this is probably a little hard to follow, so go to the Notion page and there's something on there that'll hopefully be easier to understand. But the other cool insight I came to about this belief spiral framework is that some beliefs are spiraling beliefs. In the sense, like, some beliefs are self-fulfilling, where if we believe a certain way, then it'll affect how much or how little we believe that thing. Whereas other beliefs are just beliefs. They are what they are. And I forgot to think of some examples for this because I think when I wrote this down, I had an example in mind. But now that I'm recording this episode, I'm kind of blanking on the exact examples, but I'll probably think of it in the next episode. And then for L's of the week, I think it's definitely, well, last week I didn't record an episode because I just been traveling. So L's of the week is probably like, it's so difficult to maintain routines and habits while I'm traveling. That's what I'm finding. And so being able to come back has definitely helped a ton. Where now that I'm back after traveling a whole bunch, like this is super, super nice to finally get back on track with my habits and routines and all those things. But L of the week is definitely that I didn't keep up with anything last week. So that's the L. And obviously learning a ton because I went through that. And then I'm going to cut to a part that I recorded sometime last week when I was still traveling. And it gives like a mini life update of what I was up to and how I ended up in Seattle. And I'll come back after that.
I'm in Seattle now, driving somewhere. And I wanted to record the story because getting here to Seattle was kind of crazy. I mean, it was one of the most hectic getting to the airports and barely making the flight type of deals. And spoiler alert, like I probably hit the world record, at least my personal record, for going from security to the gate in literally 7 minutes. And security was like, it was far from the gate. I had to go down like this long escalator, like walk across 2 huge walkways, this huge hallway, and then go up the escalator and then go all the way to the right and then book it down there. But it was like a whole journey. Well, really back, I just finished school, right? Like this past week on Thursday was my last final. And after that final, I literally like just checked out completely because I was supposed to hop on a meeting like 30 minutes or an hour after the final. I just completely forgot about it. Luckily, hopped on the meeting, everything went fine. And then that night, I realized that I hadn't even like packed it all, planned out where I'm going to put my stuff, figured out flights and how I'm going to get to Seattle. Because I knew I was trying to get to Seattle that weekend. I just didn't know like when or what flight I was going to do. I didn't have to figure it out. So the next day comes along, I do the routine, like head to the gym and figure all that stuff out. And then eventually I figure, okay, now I should actually probably like figure stuff out. So I pack up all my stuff, get my flights figured out, and then I like have it all set. I'm able to store where my stuff is supposed to be for the summer. And then I decide I'm going to catch the 7:40 p.m. flight. It's at 7:40, boarding ends at 7:30. So I'm like, you know what? As long as I get there, like, I don't know, like 6:30, then I should be chill. I should be fine. So I figure out logistics. I decide I'm going to catch the bus. So I head onto the bus. And when I get to it, I figured that I would barely make it to where, instead of getting there at 6:30, which would give me some breathing room, I'll get there like at 6:45, which means I would get to the airport just barely in time to have some breathing room where I'd be like, okay, I can walk to my gate, and take my time through security, and I should be fine. Even though I'd barely be able to make it, but I should be fine. I get to the bus stop, and then I see the bus that I'm supposed to go on, so I'm like, oh, perfect. So when I'm walking onto that bus, the bus driver's on, like, oh yeah, no, get off. What are you doing? Because they just got back from the route, and I guess it was their time off, and someone else was supposed to come and then drive the new route, or the new bus. So I'm waiting, and eventually the bus is supposed to leave at 5:45 because it's like an hour to get to the airport. We get there at 6:45. The bus is supposed to leave at 5:45. So I'm waiting, and then it hits 5:45, and I'm looking around like, where the heck is everyone? Or at least, where the heck is the bus driver? Everyone who was heading to the airport was along the sides too. Like a couple other students I saw, we're all waiting, and I'm like scrolling through Uber, looking at the options, like, okay, if it comes to it, I might have to cancel one of these. So I started talking with the students, like, yo, what are the odds? Like, what time is your flight? What are the odds we catch Uber and split it 4 ways? And then I checked Uber, prices were like $60. Like, what the heck? They were literally like $40 30 minutes ago. So I was telling me, okay, I'm gonna wait it out, see how long it takes. And then I see someone walking up, and they're all dressed in purple. I'm like, okay, that's probably them. As we're walking up, they just stand there. I'm like, okay, that's not them. But eventually the bus driver comes, get on the bus, everyone heads onto it. We all swipe in our cards or whatever. And then now we're waiting, and we take off around 6. And this is like really cutting it close. Because my flight starts boarding at 7, and I get to the airport at 7. So as soon as I get there, I'm going to have to book it to the gate. But in between the bus drive and getting to the airport, I feel like there's a bit of a lesson because I could have done one or two things. I could have stressed out a bunch about, okay, as soon as I get to the airport, I can do this, and that, and like breathing heavy and being completely overwhelmed by how much I would have to do when I land there or when I actually get to the airport. Or I could do the other option, which is just chill out and philosophize and just do whatever I would do anyways. And then when I get to the airport, then I start like stressing out and stuff, or like running. Because honestly, there's no point in me on the way to the airport, like stressing out about what would happen. Because what's done is done. Like, I'm either going to get there and sprint and make the flight, or I won't make the flight. Like, either way, what's going to happen is going to happen. So on the way there, I was just philosophizing about this thing, which I'll probably talk about later, about beliefs and actions and all those things. And then I finally get there. And it's game time. Get off the bus. Like, as soon as we're pulling up, I'm literally standing at the door. So when the bus driver opens up the door, I'm literally booking it out of there. And I have my duffel bag the entire time. So I'm like, carrying my duffel, literally like a whole other workout. So I'm carrying my duffel bag, rushing up the escalator. And in order to get to the right terminal, which is Terminal 1, I had to catch this like shuttle that goes there. So as I'm heading up the escalators, I'm hoping that I could barely make a shuttle that's about to head off instead of having to wait a whole nother 5 or 10 minutes or whatever it is. As I'm heading up these escalators, I'm seeing a whole group of people coming down the escalator. So I'm like, okay, that probably means that a shuttle just got here and dropped off a whole bunch of people. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to book it up the escalator. And then luckily I barely made the shuttle. So I ran in there. I was like, oh, that's step 1 complete. It's 1 step closer to getting where I need to be. So I make it onto the shuttle at 7:05. I remember this so vividly. I went onto the shuttle at 7:05. Now I have 25 minutes to get to my gate. This boarding ends at 7:30. I'm like, okay, this shouldn't be hard at all. I should probably get there in, I don't know, 5 minutes maybe. But the thing is, Terminal 1 was literally the last stop on this entire shuttle ride. So we have to go through like Terminal 5 and Terminal 4, then 3 and 2. And finally we get to 1. And by the time we get to 1, it's already 7:15. So then my 25 minutes that I originally had jumped down to 15 minutes. I only had minutes to get from there to the gate. And I still have to go through security, and I still get to my gate and all those things. So as soon as the shuttle doors open, I'm literally the first one booking it out. It was like a dude behind me was like in the same boat. So as I was like running up the escalator, he was running behind me, and we're like, okay, we got this. So I'm actually like that pre-check, which is like a lifesaver. And like, spoiler alert for those who travel, I mean, pre-check is just one of those things you have to have. It'll literally take like 1 afternoon and will save you hours and hours and hours of time. So I run to pre-check, then I finally get in, and I book it past the lady who's supposed to like check, make sure we're actually pre-check. So I run past her, and I'm like, oh, my bad. We're back to ours, here's my thing, and then I finally make it through. But once I make it through, I look at the pre-check line, and it was way longer than I thought it would be. So I immediately go to the front, and I'm like, hey, can I be like, just real quick, slide in here? Because my flight is boarding right now, and they're literally about to take off in like 15 minutes. Can I please make it on? And they're like, oh yeah, we're in the same boat too. And I looked, and they had like a UW, a University of Washington social. I was like, oh, you're on the same flight. Like, oh, we got to book it together. We're in this together. So luckily, they let me in. We get past security. Nothing got taken away, which is super nice because I had like toothpaste and lotion in my bag that I was really hoping wasn't going to be taken. But I finally got through, and I thought, well, like, okay, if I get to the gate on time, or I get to the gate before you guys, I'll let them know to hold the boarding doors open. So after I grab my bag, get my duffel bag, I start booking it. I'm talking like I've never ran that fast in that airport in ages. Honestly, I haven't been huffing and puffing in that like that type of way in ages. So I head down to the escalator, and then I go down, and I'm rushing down the stairs, and then there's this super long hallway that I have to get across, and I'm running down there with 2 long walkways. And going up the stairs, I was like, okay, I need a break. I need some breathing. So I chill on the escalator. And as soon as I get off, I book it down to the right. It's another long hallway. It's all the way down there and to the left. And I finally make it to the gate. So luckily, I was able to make it. And like I said, I went from security, not even from security, I went from the shuttle to my gate in 7 minutes, which is, I don't know, personally, it's pretty impressive. Like, the Kirk World Record. And then I was able to make it to Seattle and all those things. So that is all a dub. Couple of key takeaways in the story. First of all, in those moments in between where I literally couldn't control anything, like, there's no point in stressing out. I mean, it's just like, go with the flow. On my way to the bus is a perfect example of that. There's no point in me stressing out, like, oh, well, can the bus driver do this or do that? Or all those things. Like, I'll just go with the flow. Same thing when I was on the shuttle heading to my terminal. Like, there was no point in me stressing out in between that time. Was like, what's done is done, and I have no control over how fast or slow the shuttle goes. I have no control over how fast or slow the bus goes. So I'm just gonna let it be. But I do have control over how fast I run. Like, that's stuff I do have control over. So that's the stuff I'm actually gonna be stressing out about. The other lesson is to ask. Like, when I got to the airport, when I got through security, all I did was ask a person, like, can I please jump the line because I really didn't make this flight. And they were super understanding and super like, oh yeah, of course, of course. Those are probably the 2 takeaways from the story.
Now coming back to present day, another story that I wanted to tell while I was traveling is that for some reason, like, we have these lounge benefits now from my uncle. And because of that, we're lounge hopping between all these different lounges at the airports. And my brother, he said something that I thought was kind of interesting, funny, but also I thought this was just a cool insight. He said, never give fobs rich people stuff. And the reason he said that is because when we're going to these lounges, we get like a certain amount of guests. Like, for example, we go to a restaurant and they give you like $27 of credit. And it's basically like free credit. Like, you don't have to buy anything. They just give you $20 to spend at the restaurant. And $20, it goes a pretty long way at these airport restaurants. And one of the things that it allows you to do, this card benefit thing, is that you can add people as guests. So if you can bring 2 guests and they also get $27 each. And so there's this thing where we were sitting at a restaurant and then there's these 2 ladies who were off to the side and they were about to pay like whatever amount of money that they had to pay for their meal. Or they haven't even paid at this point. They're still about to order. They're thinking, oh, what should we get? And then my brother goes up to him and is like, hey, do you want to be added as a guest? You get 27 free bucks each. It's like, oh, dang. And this idea of like giving, and I feel like this is a Tongan thing, but I'm not really sure. But this idea of like giving what you have, I think it's embedded and ingrained into this Tongan culture, where I have this thing that I have no obligation to you whatsoever, but I will give it to you because it is free for me and it benefits you. And I think that's something that, at least in my experience with Tongans, that's something that they all have. Because there's this other time where my brother's like, oh my goodness, I can't go back to Tonga because if I go, I'm gonna come back broke. I'm like, bro, why don't you just say no? Like, they can ask you for all these things, just say no. He's like, that's not how it works in Tonga. Like, if they ask you for something, you give it to them because that's what we do. We give to each other. And I think it comes to a point where, like, it's nice when we can, but I think a lot of the times, or at least some of the times, we get caught where we're giving away too much stuff where we don't have enough for ourselves. I think that's where this spirit of giving can actually come back to bite. But I just thought that was an interesting insight that I had. And it kind of ties in with the life update because I've just been traveling a bunch. Like, literally in the past week, I went from Chicago to Seattle to Sao Paulo, Brazil, to Anaheim, California, to Chicago again, all in 7 days. And so finally being back here, I can get back on track with stuff. But in terms of updates with everything that I got going on, first update with myself. Obviously, physical health kind of went out the window just because I was just traveling and then difficult to stay on top of things. But I think mentally, it's been pretty good, pretty decent, especially with like having the time to spend with my people, which is the next update. Like the past week has just been filled with me chilling with the fam and having a good time and just being able to really be present with them, and that's always awesome. But in terms of my work, I mean, like I mentioned last week, I just didn't do a shred of work. And so I don't know, it's kind of weird because I want to do work while I'm with them. And so like I need those getaways. I need those breaks to just be by myself and where I want to just put my head down, go to my computer and then put in the work. But now that I'm out here, back in Chicago, back at school, where we started the Jumpstart program, which is 10 weeks where we go full time into the startup. They give us 10K. Now I can really focus in on building something, like building something that people actually want. And so that'll probably be the rest of this episode will be the biggest updates, biggest takeaways from my work. And I made a LinkedIn post about this, but we had these two really cool guest speakers. They came in and they talked about all the things like entrepreneurship and building and prototyping. But a couple key takeaways that I had from talking with them was for sure these three things. The first one was get out of the building. And I've been strategizing and contemplating and workshopping just in the building. Like me and another guy who's on the team, like we're just, what colors do you think would work best? What ideas do you think would work best? We're like, none of this is actually telling us what the customer wants. Like it's up to us to go outside the building, get some insights of what they actually want, and then from there we can make decisions and we can build something that they actually want. Second takeaway is definitely moving fast, because I tend to overthink things. I tend to be like, okay, let's think through what are 10 steps ahead, especially coming from like a huge interest in chess and stuff. Like you're supposed to think that many steps ahead. Like even in philosophy, you're supposed to think ahead of what people might counter argue against what you're trying to argue for. And so you got to think ahead of what people might say or what they might object to. And I think that's probably why I tend to think ahead. So this idea of like, don't think ahead too much, just think ahead to the next step, get that done, and then you can move forward from there. Third takeaway is to focus on the problem. And they told this story, or she told the story of this idea of faster horses. And she asked me this, she was like, did you know the faster horse story? And it goes something like this, where if Henry Ford would have asked people what they wanted him to build, they would have said faster horses, because none of them knew what a car even was. I mean, Henry Ford literally invented the car. So the key takeaway there is to, like, people will look at it and say, oh, don't ask your customers what they want. No, the key takeaway there is to ask customers what their problems are. Because if you really focus in and if you really hone in on the problem, then you can come to some really cool solutions. Because for Ford, he focused on the problem. And the problem was customers wanted to get from point A to point B faster. And his solution was the car, which he obviously made and is still a super huge company today. So that was the other big takeaway. And then the other minor takeaway is it's only day 2, and I'm feeling like a ton of stress, a ton of the startup journey is hard. It's difficult because I don't know if it's gonna work. And I think that's what makes it worth doing. That's what makes the game worth playing, and why this is something that I want to do in the first place. So that was just something that I wanted to do, but that's all for this episode. I record these episodes completely free to share success with everyone. So the only thing I ask is that if you learned anything or found something interesting in this episode, just leave a review and share it with a friend. Only takes 5 seconds and it would mean the world. Thanks, and I'll see you in the next episode. Tatok, see you.